Okay. Maybe I'm gonna regret this, but I'm going to record this quite spontaneously. I am recording this quite spontaneously. I just sat down to work on some writing that I had planned. But as has been the norm for the past few months, yes, months at least, I have been feeling an incredible fight or flight response every time I sit down or stand to write, because I write a lot standing, because, yeah, that's just me and that's my regulation, and that's not an eating disorder behavior, but that's just a preference. But I am sitting down right now because I'm actually quite tired, and I honestly think I'm getting a bit sick because my throat hurts. So if at any point in this recording my throat starts sounding like a raspy animal, it's because my throat is actually genuinely hurting. And yes, I already did drink a lot of tea today. But sometimes we just get sick, and that's part of the ebb and flow of life. But anyways, I want to touch on this fight or flight response I've been feeling when it comes to my writing. And it's something I've been thinking about for a really long time. And why it's happening, and I figured, I'd just sit down and record something. I swear to God to you, I do not have any notes right now. I do not have a script. Because I know that, when I do record a scripted podcast episode, which I was listening to right before I'm sitting down to record this, I just finished listening to the edited version of the podcast episode on the fear of growing up and the fear of being healthy. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, it is so fucking clear that this basically sounds like I wrote it for a book. Because yes, I did. That's actually gonna form the like skeleton, I guess, for a chapter in a book I'm writing currently about autism and anorexia. It's not my quasi recovery book that's coming out soon. It's a different one because, yes, my ADHD brain likes to jump the projects before they even finish and go to the next one. And then I end up feeling overwhelmed by all the projects going on, even though they're self imposed. Anyway, so why am I sitting down here without a script? Again, just like randomly messing up my schedule to record this. Because also before sitting down to record this on my walk just now, I was sending voice memos to some clients. And I was sending a voice memo to one of my clients who had listened to my episode on feeling trapped in my body and going through second puberty and feeling like a girl and not feeling like a woman. So if you've not yet listened to that episode, I highly recommend because I was just telling my friend and my client how I was so surprised at all the positive feedback I got on that episode because I was telling her like I just have such a fear of failure for writing, and it's gotten like exponentially worse over the past few months. And I think it's because I've recently been going through a lot of my blog posts and like updating a ton of stuff on the back end of my website. I completely redid like my free extreme hunger guide and turned it into a free 10-day email course. I'm completely redoing my free audio training just because how I wrote years ago, I honestly am so embarrassed and ashamed of how I wrote years ago compared to how I write now. Which a lot of people have said, no, but like Livia, this is a sign of growth and improvement. The fact that your writing has gotten so much better, and at the same time, in a very similar way to how my eating disorder kept setting like a new higher bar. Like every time I would do, you know, if I started with 15 push-ups and then I did like 20 the next day, I could never go back to 15. Now it was 20, like that was the new precedent. And then if I did 25, well, I could never go back to 20 because now it was 25 and that was the new precedent. And here we go with the throat. I'm not even editing this out. Like, and this all has to do with, the perfection piece, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment. Um, but in, yeah, so with the exercise, it was always setting a new precedent, and then with the restriction, it was also always a new precedent, right? Like, you are gonna eat that much oatmeal, and then you shave a gram off because it's like, "Ooh, now we're being, like, sneaky, we're shaving a gram off," but then 50 grams becomes 49, becomes 48, becomes 45, becomes 42, becomes 40, and, that is the insatiable, no pun intended, well, kind of pun intended if we're being honest. Sometimes I think in my brain, I'm like, "That's such a clever pun." Yeah, I'm not even gonna lie about that. But oh my gosh, and now I lost my train of thought because I went down a rabbit hole. Yeah, about the precedent thing, that's why the eating disorder is insatiable, is it's never enough. You're constantly slaving away at a new standard that you keep making up. You keep making up a new standard um until basically saying like it needs to be perfect. But because perfect is made up, it's a story we tell ourselves. Um you keep going, and you keep becoming more miserable because you realize you keep quote unquote failing, right? And there's this quote that I actually quote in my upcoming book, How to Get Out of Quasi Recovery, by Julia Cameron. Like I said, I don't have any notes in front of me right now, so excuse me if the quote is not read verbatim right now because I literally don't know what it is out of my head, but the idea of the quote is, perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It is a pursuit of the worst in ourselves, constantly convincing us that we're failures, constantly convincing us that we should quote unquote try again. And the reason I love this quote so much is because it's true, perfectionism isn't actually about being perfect. It's about confirming your belief that you are inherently a failure and that you will forever fail at whatever you do. And I think for me, that's something that I'm trying to kind of navigate myself is, I keep telling myself this needs to be perfect. What I write needs to be perfect. And, but the thing is, when I go back to proofread my manuscript for the eighth time, what am I actually doing? I am actively looking for mistakes. In other words, I'm actively looking for where I have quote unquote failed. That's what we were doing when we set this ultimatum of I'm not going to do it unless it's perfect. And I think this is, not I think, this is a big trap in recovery, is this idea of, I need to get recovery right, the fear of doing recovery wrong. And I mean, I do talk about this a lot in my quasi recovery book because this fear of doing recovery wrong, this belief that you need to get on quote unquote know the right way before taking action, this is the thing that's keeping you stuck. And I think for me, why I'm choosing to right now sit down so spontaneously. Oh my gosh, and now I remember why I wanted to talk about that puberty episode is I was telling my friend on the voice memo, friend slash client, we've become amazing friends because that just happens, there's no blocking the neurodivergent chemistry sometimes. Um, I was telling her, how I want to start a podcast series titled, Random Shit That Goes On in Livia's Head. Because out of all of the episodes I have ever made on the Live Label Free podcast, and I mean, there are over 150 episodes at this point. Because I started back in 2021. I can't even believe it's been over 4 years. That is crazy. I was telling her out of all of the episodes that I've done, and I've worked so hard on writing the perfect scripts and making it sound poetic and making it sound like it could be a book chapter, which many of my podcasts have become book chapters in one way or another, and many book chapters have influenced podcast episodes. I was telling her out of all the podcast episodes I've done, that recording that I recorded spontaneously, unplanned at 12 a.m., talking about how trapped I feel in a human body and how going through this second puberty has led me to feel very confronted with questions about gender identity and this just, misalignment in a female body and identifying with, I am a girl, wanting to stay a girl, not wanting to grow up, as I talk about in my admittedly scripted episode on the fear of being healthy and growing up, because to avoid responsibility, I I just don't ever resonate with being a woman. And obviously I talk about it in the whole episode. But why am I bringing this up? Because I got so much feedback on that episode of like, this is the first time someone's ever described how I feel. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the fact that I literally recorded that so spontaneously and just let my stream of consciousness out of me, and that there was so much resonance in that, I feel like it's very telling and also very telling in terms of this fear of failure I've been experiencing. So to elaborate on that and here I know we're jumping around a lot, but that's because this is what my brain does, and I think right now a big challenge for me and something I'm actively doing right now while I'm recording this is giving myself and my brain permission to flow in its natural flow. And many of the scripted podcast episodes, the reason I do that is because I know my brain jumps all over the place when I just talk, and I'm so terrified of judgment, of people, of listeners thinking, why can't she just tell an A to Z coherent story? Why can't she just go topic, topic, topic in chronological order and not jump around so freaking much like she's doing right now? Oh my gosh, and even as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that this is more of a judgment I have placed on myself than you, the listener, are probably thinking. Um, because, the truth is that humans don't talk chronologically. We do jump around, especially the neurodivergent mind. Like I was telling my client in the voice memo today, um, that I was trying to come up with a metaphor of like how it feels like for my brain. And I came up with this idea of like if you drop a ball, for neurotypical people, that ball goes either forward, backward, left, or right. But for the neurodivergent brain, when you drop that ball, that there's suddenly infinite amount of pathways that are possible for that ball to go down. Um, and this actually reminds me of the quote by Kierkegaard, the existentialist, who talks about the dizziness of freedom, how anxiety actually arises from possibility of having freedom, and when we fear that we are going to make the wrong choice, that our free will, won't guide us in the quote unquote right direction, that's when we become paralyzed by our mental analyses. And as I talk about in my quasi recovery book, oh my gosh, I've mentioned it like what, 3 times, 4 times at this point, because that is the most philosophical thing I have ever written. And it really provides the philosophical angle on eating disorders, which I have rarely seen before. I've seen it from a few people. I know Craig Lee Therapy on Instagram. I know I'm not on Instagram anymore because it just was becoming too much for me because I want to focus on my writing and my programs. And I'm actually planning right now when to launch season 2 of the Autistically ED Free Academy, which was incredible. Season 1 was incredible, beyond my wildest dreams. The feedback I've gotten on that. Seriously, like I have no words right now. But anyways, yeah, if you want to be the first to know when season 2 of the Autistically ED Free Academy is open for enrollment, be sure to get on the waitlist at livelabelfree.com/group. It's a whole landing page that I've created with all the information about what the academy is, what you'll learn. Yeah, all the details, you can just find them at livelabelfree.com/group, and I'll leave that link in the show notes as well. But what were we talking about? Yeah, the dizziness of freedom and Soren Kierkegaard. What I talk about in my quasi recovery book. Okay, now it's like officially the 5th time I've mentioned this book, is how the eating disorder, protects you from the existential angst of having options. It protects you from this fear that you're gonna go down the wrong path, because the eating disorder, it always creates one clear path. It creates a box with clear rules, and as long as you stay within the box, you're safe, quote unquote safe, because you're obviously not actually safe when your life is literally being threatened. But that kind of all ties back to the fear of growing up and fear of being healthy, is that if you stay small in every sense of the word and you stay over there hiding in the corner, you shield yourself from freedom, which means you shield yourself from possibility, which means in your mind that you're shielding yourself from failure. And I did write something the other day. I might just have to read you the script in a next episode of some sort about the fear of relapse and how the fear of relapse holds people back in recovery a lot. Well, it doesn't hold you back in recovery, it just prevents you from doing anything because you say, well, if I don't recover, well, then I also can't relapse. So I'm not even going to get into that here because, again, I talk about that. I have a whole chapter about that in How to Get Out of Quasi Recovery, about the fear of relapse, because someone once commented on a YouTube video basically warning me against relapse, and I used that comment actually as a guide, as a prompt for that chapter. So yeah, super excited for you to read that. But why am I sharing all this? Okay, and honestly, I really seriously hope, I've been talking for 16 minutes and 20 seconds at this point. I seriously hope that this podcast is making any sense and is seeming coherent to you in any way. Because yeah, right now I'm just literally speaking where the metaphorical ball is taking me in this maze of a brain of mine. But I sat down because I learned a lot from, sharing that 12 a.m. voice memo about me talking about second puberty, and how these raw moments where I'm just kind of sharing what's going on in my brain can be really resonating for you. And I think in a lot of ways right now, this is acting as a way for me to kind of process what has been going on with my brain and my fear of failure. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I already said this, but about the writing, going through a lot of my old work and then literally putting it side to side my current way of writing, I have just noticed, I have improved so much as a writer. And the better I get, I feel like the harder it actually is to write, because I'm so much more aware of the words I'm using, and I'm so much more aware of the way that I'm structuring sentences and that the writing flows and my word choice. Everything. There's I'm almost in a higher dimension in the writing skill capacity. And look, I'm not here to say that I am some incredible writer that that should win awards or anything. I know I'm a good writer. And I don't wanna, boost my ego or whatever, although I also don't wanna, degrade myself? I don't know if that's the right word. Um, but, I mean, it's kind of with Olympic athletes, and again, I feel almost guilty comparing myself to an Olympic athlete right now, which I'm not, but just to get an idea, when you 'cause I used to be a gymnast, when you start out with gymnastics, it's just for fun. It's not a competition, although for me as an autistic person, as a little kid, and I talk about this in my book Rainbow Girl, everything was a competition. Because fun didn't exist to me, because everything had to have a point. Everything had to be purposeful. I couldn't do anything. And honestly, I still can't do anything just for the sake of doing it. I do things so that they have an outcome. And honestly, even sitting down to record this for you right now, I'm sitting down knowing that I'm going to upload it as a podcast episode so that you can get some insights or resonance from this. Because to be honest, if I just recorded this knowing that I would throw it straight in the trash can on my laptop, um, I probably wouldn't record it because I would have called this a waste of time. Um, and there are people who would say, no, no, but that's not a waste of time. Of course, it's all dependent on what we're defining as a waste, because technically everything is a waste and everything is purposeful. But then we get into that philosophical rabbit hole that I'm not going into right now. But yeah, going back to the writing and the fear of failure, I feel like I've said that like 5 times. Coming back to this topic now, the brain is going everywhere. Um, is that I have, set the Olympic athlete, that's what we were talking about. When you just start doing gymnastics, it's fun. But then when you become good or better, it's like you need to keep becoming better and better, and everything becomes more competitive because the better you get, the more skills you try, and the more skills you try, the harder the skills are going to be. And then if you get into a situation where you're training for the Olympics, you are having heart palpitations, and as we saw with Simone Biles in the latest Olympics, how she, not the latest, the Olympics previously, how she got the twisties or whatever they call it, and literally couldn't compete because of the just debilitating fear of failure and debilitating anxiety. Um, that is what happens when you turn pro. As one of my favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, has a book called Turning Pro. Um, and he talks about the resistance a lot and how the resistance is what holds us back. Resistance with a capital R, and I do believe I quote him somewhere in one of my books. I can't even remember at this point because I write so much. Um, but he talks about the resistance with the capital R and how the resistance is the little voice in your head that tells you you shouldn't write, you shouldn't recover, you shouldn't make art because you might fail. You might not be good enough. People might laugh at you. People might shame you. People might not like it. People might not like you. And something super powerful that I love about what Stephen Pressfield says about the resistance is that he says resistance is a sign that you're on the right track. Because resistance means that deep in your heart, you want this. Because I don't even know if I'm making any sense right now, and I'm probably getting it all messed up right now. But anyways, the thing about resistance is that it's not a bad sign. I think resistance, fear, that's what it ultimately is something that you know in your heart you want to do, and that's why they say the more fear you feel, that's the thing you most need to do, or rather you most want to do. And I think I feel so much fear of writing because I do know I have proven myself and my writing capabilities in so many ways. And because I have proven myself and my writing capabilities in so many ways, and I feel like people now expect things of me and they expect a certain quality of me. And to be honest, I expect a certain quality of myself. Every time I sit down to write, it's like, okay, well, what if what I write doesn't match that quality? So I, again, I don't even know if any of this makes any sense, but I just wanted to share all of that to give you kind of an idea of what's going on in my head. And most importantly, though, why do I want you to kind of know what's going on in my head? Is because I think there's this illusion that's portrayed on social media, or maybe I even like contribute it to it on my podcast, of like when you recover from an eating disorder, your life is magically perfect and you find your purpose and you are living a life you love and you're happy and healthy and blah blah blah. But I think, this art form, this creativity that I've tapped into with my writing has unleashed, a new form of failure, a new form of the fear of failure. And that is, the fear of being a bad artist, the fear of creating the wrong art, the fear of writing in a way that people won't like. And the reason why I share this, on a podcast where we talk about autism and eating disorders is because this precisely is what the eating disorder protected me from. If I always had this excuse that I couldn't really do anything besides think about food and exercise and weigh food and count calories and all the behaviors that someone with anorexia does, I didn't have to confront this creative, artistic part of myself that I currently am living as. So I realize that I'm kind of feeling like this episode is coming to a close. Like, just instinctually, I feel like I've said what I wanted to say. I'm very well aware that this episode did not have a narrative arc. As I think I have pressured myself a lot of the time that everything I write must be a story, must have a narrative arc, must have an introduction and like a climax and have the main points and then have a powerful conclusion that sums everything up. Um, and like I said in the beginning, maybe this sitting down, speaking, just allowing the thoughts out of me and allowing you to listen to them raw and unfiltered. And I swear I'm literally not even gonna edit this. I'm not even gonna edit out the likes and the ums and the ahs and the pauses and even the coughs. Because again, this is human. I've told people before that when I read books, and I find like one typo or two typos, that I love when I find one or two typos. I mean, honestly, like if you write a book and there's typos like everywhere on like every page, I'm like, come on, go get an editor. Um, but when I find like a few typos or mistakes in the book, I love the author even more because I think it's a sign that they're human, right? Because humans do make mistakes. We're not robots. I mean, that's what we have AI for, right? And AI, we're not even gonna get started on that because I have so many thoughts about AI, and I don't know if anyone has noticed, and this is part of the reason why I got off Instagram. Just increasingly, I just have been seeing more people literally write, well, they don't write it, but their captions are literally written by AI. And I'm like, I cannot participate in this. Um, and I think as a writer, I think a lot of people don't even notice or realize, but as a writer who is so, um, like, and my autism totally contributes to this, I am so hyper vigilant of words and the way that things are written. I can I can just tell without a doubt if something is written with AI or not. And on Instagram, I have increasingly been seeing people literally use AI to write their captions. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be in a sphere with the robots. Like, I wanna talk to actual humans. So, that being said, I think this is a perfect way to wrap up today's episode. If you are a human listening to this, which I'm assuming you are, I would love, love, love to hear your feedback on today's stream of consciousness. I guess we're gonna call it random shit that goes on in Livia's mind. I'm super curious if you want more episodes like this of me literally just sitting down and sharing what I've been struggling with, some thoughts that I've been having, where we go down random ass rabbit holes, where we bring in elements of philosophy and existentialism with hints of eating disorder related rabbit holes, I guess, here and there. So yeah, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple or another podcast platform, you can send me a message by going to my website, livelabelfree.com/contact, and you can share your thoughts there, and I will personally respond to you, or at least I'll try to. I get so many emails nowadays that I unfortunately can't respond to everyone, but I do read every single message I get, so that would mean so much to me. And if you're listening on YouTube, I would love if you can drop a comment below this video, share your insights, share your thoughts, your reflections. Honestly, that there's nothing that brings a bigger smile to my face than knowing that I have touched another human being. Because I think especially in our current day and age with all the upheaval that's been going on, and all the AI and the artificial intelligence replacing humans in so many ways, I think human connection, especially now, is really so, so important, more important than ever. So yeah, I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear what you thought, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye bye for now.
Baby, just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see.